This my generation.
Play Shut Up and Let Me Go by the Ting Tings.
Shut Up and Let Me Go by the Ting Tings, starting now.
I now present to you the theme song to today's video, my inspiration and motivation to get this project done.
Contain yourself. Hi world, Jenny here. Amazon's here. Oh my god, this is literally perfect timing. Woohoo! Hi. I was just talking about this. There you go. Have a good day. I'm transforming another room and my package is here! I may or may not have had all of the tools to get this project done, but I didn't have time to go shopping, to be buying all of the paint prep and all of the things that I need. So I had to work with what I have at home. I budgeted and got some much needed accessories like the beads, which you'll see what I'm using them for very soon. But all the other little stuff, I just am very much so a problem solver. The ultimate problem solving queen. I'm gonna figure it out. In the next couple weeks here, I am transforming my basement into the ultimate boho cozy living situation, and almost everything in this room is going to be either on an extreme budget from a thrift store, delivered to me via Amazon one-day delivery, or DIY. Since this is a big project and it's gonna take me a while, I'm gonna divide it up into sections. So this video is going to be mostly about my DIY faux wallpaper. Basically, watched a 5-minute crafts, and never do the crafts. Well, this time, you bet your butt that I'm gonna shut up and get done.
So of course I'm gonna clear the area of this one little wall that I'm working on first. I'm gonna give it a good wipe down so I can prep for painting as much as I can. And this is my first little hack for you guys. I did not have painter's tape, or I couldn't find my painter's tape, and I just so happened to have a mini lint roller in my paint bucket. I'm not sure why, but I was like, oh, there we go, I'm using it. So I grabbed a couple sheets, and this is what I used to cover the electric sockets on the walls, because I'm trying to get things done quickly and make it look as nice as possible, but with what I have on hand. So if you happen to have some lint rollers around and you don't have painter's tape, just cover this up. It literally fit perfectly. And it was nice because if I accidentally rolled over the light socket, it didn't do any damage to any part of the plate, and it worked really well. So that's my first little hack for you guys to shut up and get it done. Now I get my groceries delivered, and the store that I use actually sells paint, so I just went ahead and ordered my groceries and threw in this $9 bucket of paint to use, and I used some press and seal to line my paint tray. I know people use saran wrap, but this press and seal worked because I didn't have saran wrap on hand, and it's nice because it sticks to the edge of your painting tray and doesn't move. So that is what I used to quickly pour my paint, and all I had on hand was this little tiny paint roller, but you're trying to hurry up and get things done as quickly and nicely as possible, so this is what worked for me, guys. I am very picky and particular with how things are done, but I wasn't perfect with this paint job because I'm going to be stenciling over it. So I only ended up doing 2 coats, keeping in mind that I'm going to have a design over this, and it doesn't matter if it's not perfect.
So this is the tools that I'm going to be using for that 5-minute project I was telling you guys about. A block of wood, You can use whatever size you want. So you can use a smaller block with smaller rubber bands for smaller lines on your wall. But since I don't want it to look too busy, I'm using a bigger block with wider rubber bands spread more apart. What you're basically going to be doing is wrapping rubber bands in whatever design you want around your block of wood, then dipping it into paint and stamping your wall. So it's going to look like wallpaper, but it's a lot cheaper. You need just a small can of paint for a project like this. And I think it'll be a lot quicker than wallpaper too, because it gets very complicated. Having only one rubber band on there was going to make it too flush and you might get other marks on the wall from the paint. So we layered 3 rubber bands, just wrapped it around this crappy piece of wood. That gave you a little bit of distance between the block and the wall. I'm just going to flip-flop the design. But first, before I start on the wall, I'm going to test it out on paper just to make sure that it gives you the look you want, and we'll go from there. I'm not going to use a painting tray for this because they have little ridges in them for your paintbrush, and I want to have the flattest surface possible for these rubber bands to get covered in paint. So I'm just grabbing a plate for my kitchen that I don't really care about, and I'm just going to line it with press and seal. So this is another little $9 can of paint that I got from my grocery store. I knew that I didn't need very much paint, so these were convenient for me because it's not a very big wall that I'm working with. You will see here that I end up changing the method of the way I did this. With the paper, it was hard to practice on because the paint kept sticking to the paper and it wasn't really giving me a good idea of what I was going to be working with. It was kind of splattering everywhere. So later on, what I ended up doing was just using a paintbrush and painting the rubber bands every few stamps that I did on the wall. I wanted it to look a little bit more organic and have some depth to it, so I didn't want every single line being very thick. I thought this paper towel method of dabbing it before I stamped it was going to work, but it didn't. So just for future reference, if you do try this DIY project, just use a paintbrush and paint your rubber bands as you go. It is much easier that way. So as you can see here, I'm about to make a little mistake, and that is okay. This is when I still hadn't figured out that the dipping into the paint process was not going to work. It was all kind of trial and error. As you can see, I'm not stamping the top line up there because I realized later it is much better to have your rubber bands at the edge of the block of wood. That way you can get to the very tip top of the ceiling. I figured all this out as I went. I had never done this before. And I found out that those little mistakes that I made that I was worried about, making a mess and I was going to paint over them right away, you just save it till the very end because most of the mistakes I made were covered up by other lines anyways, so it really didn't matter. On my agenda, request my chariot, get ya. The doors OPEN, take the hot road and hop in. First impression, you OPEN. Once I finished my wall, I went through and went over all of those edges at the top and bottom with the rubber bands now at the edge of the block. Some of this work here can be tedious. You may need to go over it a couple times depending on the look that you want. I didn't really mind it not looking perfect because I kind of liked that messy look in a way, which is really weird because I don't like messy. But you might need to wobble your block a little bit to get the rubber bands to cover the areas if your wall is not even or if the block is uneven. And then at the end, of course, I did make a lot of mistakes. I just went through with some white paint and went over those spots a second time with the pattern going the right way. Then I fixed up any little splotches that were seen that I was not happy with and any lines that were crooked or messy with a little paintbrush. Open up. You OPEN, bitch, you won't BBM. We should be closer than friends. And of course at the very end is when I went and cleaned up all my trim and the parts around the light socket that I wasn't happy with.
And just a tip, once you're down here, just go ahead and touch up any of those ugly spots in your house that need attention, that you haven't given attention lately, because when doing a project like this, if you're down here already, just get it done. It makes a huge difference. It makes everything look fresh and new and clean, and like you gave it some attention. This stupid block of wood was sitting there loose for months, and I was tired of it, so I grabbed some flex shot that was sitting in the living room, and I just stuck it together, because that dumb block of wood is going to save me a lot of stress now, and I won't have to look at it broken anymore. So once you're down here, just fix up those little pieces of your house that you've been neglecting. It feels so good. So I actually ended up leaving this little area by the light socket the way that it is, because I kind of like the way it turned out. Not all the lines look the same. They're not perfect. There's a lot of texture and dimension to the wall, so I'm happy. For this next part, I ended up shopping my house and not even remembering that I have a round mirror in my guest bathroom. This was left here when we got the house, and I was actually going to use this rectangular mirror that I had in the basement already, because it's got a cute little boho design in the frame that I really liked, and I like the wood feature in the room, but a round mirror makes it feel a little bit warmer and cozy in your room. So I am swapping out this mirror because it matches the bamboo shelf, and I am taking the round mirror to give some warmth to my boho basement. It worked out perfectly. I absolutely hate finding studs in the walls, and I have a horrible time hanging shelves and things because I never get it right. And this mirror in the bathroom happened to have these metal anchors. They're huge and they're super heavy duty. I just used a screwdriver as a drill bit because I could not find one. So that is something I would recommend if you don't have time to be finding studs in your walls and you need to make something really sturdy. Okay. It slid right in there. Oh my gosh, I did it. I did it. So one more DIY that I have for you guys that I did for this wall. I didn't like this black nursery pot that I had my plant in. It's just a boring pot that the plant came in from the store, but I just wanted to add a little bit more texture and color to this wall. So I took it out, and I'm gonna do what I did here, which was put hot glue in whichever design you want and then paint over it. So I think I'm just gonna make it simple and do it white. So I decided to stick with the same design that I painted on the wall, but instead I'm making the lines out of hot glue, just for some added texture. My hot glue gun was really bad, so this is much easier if you have a reliable glue gun. It will go much quicker and smoother. The good thing about a project like this is you have the freedom to be as creative as you want. Since I was sticking to the same pattern as I have on the wall, I wanted to change it up a little bit. So I made some smaller sections and some longer lines just to give it a little bit more character. Then before you start painting your pot, if you have a really crappy hot glue gun like I do, you may need to go through with your fingers and clean up all of the stringy, messy hot glue gun remnants. And now you have a brand new creative plant pot design at absolutely no cost to me, since I already had the paint supplies and some glue sticks on hand. And that's a wrap for part 1 of my boho basement transformation. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and that it gave you some inspiration and motivation on how to enhance your home and make it exactly the way you want. I'm just happy to finally have a cozy little area where I can use my sewing machine and work on all the future projects I have coming up soon for you guys to see. I'm really excited about all of this. But I know Christmas is this week and everybody's getting ready for the holidays, so I am just going to enjoy that with my family and friends, and I hope you guys have a really happy holiday and a wonderful new year. Thank you so much for watching. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Ting Tings, for the theme song. All credit goes with the Ting Tings. Come on.
The Ting Tings gave me my theme song. Let me live.